This is Peter Laws in Norman, Oklahoma. AM, FM, shortwave, amateur radio, and more. You'll hear all the latest news from the world of radio each week with Sheldon and Gilles on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. It is Sunday, October the 13th. We thank you for tuning in to our show. We're here every week with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. My name is Sheldon. I'm here with Gilles. We're going to take you around the world a little bit today. A lot of international stories and a few interesting, quirky little items to talk about as well. So without further ado, I think we should get right into it. 30 minutes goes by so quickly every week. So we'll try to get as much in as we can.
So in our first story, we have Curtis LeGeyt, that is at the National Association of Broadcasters Show New York. This is radio's best moment. This is via Inside Radio. The focus of the first ever radio and podcast interactive forum at the National Association of Broadcasting Show New York on Wednesday was sharing best practices and harnessing new tech to connect and engage with wider audiences in every day possible. But with Hurricane Milton growing in size and churning towards Florida Gulf Coast, the conversation also included a reminder of how radio continues to bring communities together when the going gets tough. I just want to put in a plug for what we are doing here. NAB President and CEO Curtis LeGeyt said, teeing up a day of sessions that brought radio broadcasters and podcasters together to discuss common goals and strategies. Even if we're doing it outside of our traditional radio mechanism, we're providing our listeners with a sense of intimacy, a connection, trusted information, bringing communities together. No one else in media is doing that right now, he asserted. With major back-to-back hurricanes in the southeast, the NAB topper made a case that this is radio's best moment. First, Helene, now Milton, provides another reminder of our durability, the lifeline that we're providing in times of emergency that no one else can. That's not just preparing communities for the storm, LeGeyt said. It's helping them through it when other forms of communication fail, and it's helping to rebuild in the aftermath. The connection listeners have with their favorite radio personalities and stations takes on greater importance when helping rally citizens to rebuild their community following a major disaster. When people are going through really difficult times, radio can help with the healing, and that's a big part of what we are here to talk about today, LeGeyt continued. The 2024 model of NAB Show New York is the first to include a track of dedicated sessions program for both radio broadcasters and podcasters. Many of these sessions are followed by roundtables where attendees can get on one-on-one time with panelists. The 3-day event, which opened Tuesday, is expected to attract 12,000 people to the halls of the Javits Center in New York City. Calling the audio landscape fiercely competitive, LeGeyt said, engaging with listeners is becoming more difficult with so many platforms out there producing content. Our competitive advantage, no matter how we're reaching our audiences, is that localism, that community connection, and you all do it better than anyone else, he added. Using the hurricanes that slammed into, of course, the United States as an example of how important all of this is to help out and, make people feel better and help them out.
I think in small towns, too, it's particularly important. We played the recording last week of the iHeart stations in the Asheville, North Carolina area. And I continued listening to them this week. And just as he was talking about here, the personalities, the people that were on the radio were people that were affected as much as the people who were listening to them. So these are local people. They live in the community. People know them. They know people. There were people actually calling in who you could tell they personally knew these people. And that really created that bond, I think, between the people on the radio and the people who were out there trying to, put their life back in order. So I think it was very timely that he brought up those subjects at this conference in particular, and to realize once again, just the important role that radio was playing.
And you could see that, the National Association of Broadcasters have to also look at modern times, and by adding not just, broadcasting as we know it in the radio, but podcasts also.
Exactly. Our next story is kind of interesting. It's coming out of a neighborhood in northern Kentucky. It is by Sam Knef with Spectrum News 1 Kentucky. Radio towers causing problems for residents of northern Kentucky neighborhood. Residents of the northern Kentucky neighborhood said radio signals from nearby towers are causing all kinds of issues. On top of that, they get little to no cell phone service, causing some to worry about the safety of their living situation. It's hard to justify $1 million home when you can't utilize everything on a day-to-day basis, said Jordan Nierenberger, resident of the Sanctuary Village in Villa Hills. Or, as resident Christina Cobb put it just doesn't make very enjoyable to live back here when you have such a nice neighborhood and such a nice city. Who added, cell phone service has always been really spotty here. Heather Jansen, Villa Hills mayor, said that there are pockets with no cell coverage throughout the city because of a lack of towers. But the tower's proximity to Sanctuary Village is what residents said are causing other issues. You can't predict when it's going to happen. It can just affect your day-to-day life, Nierenberger said. The towers which iHeartRadio owns and the radio signals are showing up in and around people's homes in unwanted ways. A lot of the houses through the streets right here had issues where our smoke detectors were going off constantly. Garage doors weren't opening or working. Washers and dryers weren't working, Cobb said. Anything that had a small voltage wire wouldn't work. Some of them will actually pick up the radio signal through their computer headsets. Nierenberger said it has affected his car. If our vehicle is parked in the garage or right outside the garage, there's some type of interference that is basically causing it to try to open the trunk or try to start the car, he said. Basically, every morning, I have to jump start my vehicle. Cobb even shared a video her husband took of the radio frequency coming through on natural gas lines connected to their stove. These issues might seem harmless, but there's a real concern about safety. If a fire happens and someone can't trust their alarms, or if an emergency happens and you need to call 911 and your internet's not working and your cell phone reception's not working because of these issues, it's obviously a danger to not only us, but our neighbors as well. How are you supposed to get a hold of anybody, or what happens in the case of an emergency, Cobb added. Jansen said the city is aware of the issue, which residents said is intermittent, and is looking into solutions. But it's possible there may not be one. Proximity is certainly going to be a hard thing to fight, she said. I don't know specifically, but we've certainly been reaching out to everybody we possibly can to see if this can get fixed. Spectrum News 1 reached out to the iHeart company for comment to see if anything can be done and has yet to receive a response. City officials also wanted to clarify there are no safety concerns at River Ridge Elementary School, which has landlines in each classroom to compensate for the lack of cell service. Wow. So this is a common problem, probably more cases of it than people are aware of. Some people may not even realize that it's happening, but if you're paying attention and it starts affecting major things like cell service, opening and closing your car trunk, what have you, this is the danger of proximity to high-powered transmission towers.
When I would do some tech duties, we would go to the Mile End, which is close to the mountain where we have that big tower, the CBC, with all the antennas and the radio stations there. Amount of complaints of, well, why am I hearing music in my computer speakers when my computer's off? Or why is my mouse not working? Well, the RF was just jamming the mouse. It was like, these are common problems that we see in many, many places. But in this case, it's like really horrible in not getting cell service.
Yeah, and interfering with internet and that sort of thing. You start messing with people's internet, and people get really upset really quickly. So but like they said, it's proximity to the towers, and these towers have probably been there before some of these housing developments. That may be the cause of the problem, is they may be built a little too close to these towers.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, and the next story, sad story. Says at the rate journalists are being killed in Gaza, there will soon be no one left to keep you informed. And this is via Reporters Without Borders. In less than a year, over 130 journalists have been killed by Israel forces in Gaza. To pay homage to these fallen reporters and demand the protection of Palestinian journalists, Reporters Without Borders is holding flash protests in 10 different countries. RSF that was holding flash protests all around the world to pay homage to the journalists in late September killed in Gaza. Since October 7, the Israeli army has killed over 130 journalists in the Palestinian enclave, and at least 32 of whom were murdered while working. With this global awareness campaign, RSF aims to alert the international public to the gravity of this crisis. The alarming rate at which these journalists are being killed is jeopardizing the right to free and independent information. The protests will be held all day long in 10 countries: Germany, Brazil, Spain, United States, France, the United Kingdom, Senegal, Switzerland, Taiwan, and Tunisia. Press vests covered in blood, symbolizing the horrifying number of journalists who paid with their lives for their commitment to keeping the world informed, will be placed in emblematic locations in each of these countries, such as Liberty Square in Taipei, in front of London's Big Ben, in front of the African Reconnaissance Monument in Dakar, and near the Eiffel Tower in Paris. A shared message will appear on large banners at each protest. At the rate journalists are being killed in Gaza, there will soon be no one left to keep you informed. Thibault Broutin, RSF's Director General, says the massacre of journalists in Gaza must end. The Israeli army's elimination of journalists in Gaza, over 130 killed in less than a year, threatens to create a complete media blackout in the blockaded enclave. These attacks target not only the Palestinian press, but the international public's right to information that is reliable, free, independent, and pluralist from one of the most closely watched conflict zones on the planet. We demand protection for Gaza's journalists, an end to impunity, and that foreign journalists be given access to the Strip. Our right to information is at stake. RSF has filed 4 complaints with the International Criminal Court for war crimes committed against journalists in Gaza. Following the first 2 complaints, the Office of ICC Prosecutor Karim Khan assured RSF that crimes against journalists are included in its investigation into the situation in Palestine. Together with the local organization Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism, RSF has reported over 250 journalists in Gaza working for both local and international media outlets. This support includes providing shelter and equipment to reporters so they can continue covering the war. RSF continues to advocate against the massacre of Gaza's journalists, calling for an end to the blockade preventing journalists from entering and exiting the territory, and documenting crimes committed against media professionals. RSF also opened the Press Freedom Center in Beirut, Lebanon, to provide journalists in the region, especially those covering the war, with the equipment, aid, and resources necessary to continue their work and informing the world in the safest conditions possible. It's easy to forget. We're out here in our little comfort zone, but there's journalists covering all of these stories we watch on TV, we hear on the radio, and they are putting their lives at risk every day so that we have all of this information coming through.
Yeah, it's really important that there's an organization like this, Reporters Without Borders, who keep an eye on this sort of thing. And you should actually check out their website because it's really interesting. They do show you, just how dangerous it is to be a journalist in the various countries, and they actually rate the countries in level of danger. So it's great to have them backing it up and supporting the journalists that are there and making the rest of the world aware of just how difficult and how dangerous a situation it can be in areas where this sort of thing is happening. We go next to Afghanistan. And the headline comes from Radio Info Asia. Taliban arrests the director of Radio Khushhal. The Taliban have arrested Hikmat Aryan, the director of Radio Khushhal, a private radio station in Ghazni, according to the Afghanistan Journalists Center. Radio Khushhal began operations approximately 7 months ago. AFJC reported that Aryan was apprehended on Sunday, September the 29th, at his office by the Taliban's Directorate of Intelligence, which has accused him of discussing past Taliban suicide attacks in an audio recording that was subsequently broadcast by the radio station. The audiobook, called Suicider, was recorded by Aryan years ago and is popular on social media. The book is against the Taliban's attempts to show the positive side of suicide attacks. The Taliban's intelligence agency has deemed this broadcast as disrespectful to Taliban members. However, Aryan's family has rejected these allegations, asserting that his work adheres to journalistic standards and ethics. To date, no information has been released about his condition or his whereabouts. The Afghanistan Journalists Support Organization condemned the arrest of Aryan and demanded his immediate release. AFJC stated, "We are gravely concerned that the whereabouts and current situation of Hikmat Aryan have not been disclosed to his family as of the time of this release, which constitutes a violation of their visitation rights." AFJC further emphasized, "We call on the Taliban Authority in Ghazi to immediately and unconditionally release Hikmat Aryan and to cease the use of force against journalists. Media workers must be allowed to perform their duties without the fear of arrest, threats, and attacks." So it ties right into the previous article. In this case, it's the government themselves that are stepping in and shutting down what they don't want people to hear.
Yeah, definitely. It's, the same old story on Afghanistan. We got so many of those, shutting down stations, putting some of the people there in prison so that they can't give their own opinion or point of view that, is not in accordance to what the government wants, or, just make people disappear. It's an unfortunate way that a lot of governments have to just make sure that those voices are not heard again. So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun is very active. We had several X-class solar flares in the last week. One particular one was very, very strong and created a widespread severe geomagnetic storm on Thursday night. So if you were outdoors and the sky was clear at night, a lot of beautiful pictures. Go on spaceweather.com, check them out. There's also a lot of people that I've seen on my Facebook, friends that all took pictures with their phones where they were with sky is clear. Amazing display of auroras. And of course, it had to be cloudy in Montreal, so we didn't have any auroras. This is also something to look at for the week ahead because there's still a lot of sunspots that are capable of flaring. There's AR 3848 that has everything it needs for X-class flares. So there could still be some more flaring in Earth-directed solar flares and coronal mass ejections. Sunspot number 150, solar flux 216. So when there's no flaring and conditions get quiet, it's amazing. Propagation is just beautiful, and you have tons of things to listen to, up to the highest frequencies of shortwave. But to witness all of this, you have to turn on a radio and listen.
This is Skip Berry of New Jersey, listening to International Radio Report every Sunday morning at 10:30 on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
So in our next story, Man sets Guinness World Record with a collection of 1,257 radios. This is via the NDTV India. So all of you out there that think I got too many radios at 150, hey, there's much worse than me. When was the last time you tuned into a radio station and sat through a series of advertisements only to listen to your favorite song or show? In the world of Spotify, YouTube, and other digital music services, the good old radio has become ancient. But Ram Singh Bood, a resident of Gajrola in Amroha, district of Uttar Pradesh, is guarding the humble radio. His collection of over 1,000 radios has secured him a position in the Guinness Book of World Records. Mr. Bood has radios from the 1920s all the way up to 2010, purchased from various markets of the country, including Delhi and Meerut. He has 1,400 radios, but as per the guidelines of the Guinness World Records, all radios should be unique. The duplicates were removed from the list. With 1,257 radios, Mr. Bood broke the previous record of Mr. Prakash, who had a collection of 625 radios. When asked about his inspiration behind establishing a radio museum at home, Mr. Bood said it is to make the future generation aware of the impact of radio on society. He added 10 years ago, on October 3rd, 2014, Prime Minister Modi started Man Ki Baat, giving a new lease of life to radio in Akashvani, bringing the broadcaster advertisements and money. In November 2023, during his monthly radio show, Man Ki Baat, Prime Minister Narendra Modi recognized Mr. Bood's efforts. In his address to the nation, Prime Minister Modi noted that Man Ki Baat has made radio more popular in every household. Sharing a letter by Mr. Bood, Prime Minister said Ram Singh Ji is collecting radios for many decades. He says that after Man Ki Baat, people's curiosity about his radio museum has increased. Following Prime Minister's mention of Mr. Bood, received a special invitation for the Republic Day Parade in New Delhi this year. He is retired from the post of Supervisor of Warehouse Corporation of India. So I do have to buy a lot more radios to get there. And I don't know, but they have to be unique. So already I have to remove a few of them because I do have 2 radios. Sometimes it's just a color that's changed. So I guess they want to have really specific new models that are very different. I mean, radios from 1920s up to 2010, that must be a very interesting museum to look at. I mean, all the radios he's got, there must be some beautiful stuff in there.
There is a photo accompanying the article, which when we post it up, you'll get a chance to take a look at it. But a lot of them, the older radios, obviously take up a lot of space. So I'm assuming this guy has a pretty big house because to fit a lot of those older radios in, you're going to need a lot of space. And I know in the photo, a lot of them are not portable radios. They are quite large. So yeah, you better have a lot of room for 1,257 radios. Our next story takes us to Burkina Faso in West Africa. The Junta-led Burkina Faso suspends Voice of America Radio. This is from Mike Cooper via Glenn Hauser's World of Radio IO Group. Authorities in military-ruled Burkina Faso have suspended Voice of America Radio for 3 months over remarks likely to undermine the morale of the forces fighting jihadists, the U.S. radio's network said on Wednesday. The West African nation has been battered by a jihadist insurgency that swept in from neighboring Mali in 2015. Multiple foreign news outlets, the majority in French, have been shuttered temporarily or indefinitely since Captain Ibrahim Traoré seized power in a September 2022 coup. Pursuant to the order, we have shut down our FM transmitter in Ouagadougou, VOA spokesperson Nigel Gibbs said in a statement sent to Agence France Presse. Burkina's AIB state news agency reported that the Supreme Council of Communication took the decision after a journalist at VOA described a jihadist attack on September 17th in the Malian capital, Bamako, as courageous. It said the journalist also said that nothing is being done in terms of security by the combat forces of Burkina Faso. The AIB news agency quoted the regulatory authority as saying that the serious shortcomings were likely to undermine the morale of combat forces who are battling jihadist groups. Local media reported that VOA was also fined 25 million French francs, or $42,000, or 38,100 euros. While VOA respects the regulatory framework within Burkina Faso, we do not agree with what we believe are incorrect assertions made by the CSC, Gibbs said. He also refuted that the radio network had condoned or justified terrorism. Statements made during the program in question, Washington Forum, were part of an open discussion designed to inform and engage audiences on important security matters affecting the region. Our goal was to approach the topic in a fair and impartial way. The junta has made the return of national sovereignty one of its priorities and regularly hits out against Western powers. So this has happened to VOA and other broadcasters in other countries at times where they don't like what's being said. They don't like foreign broadcasters informing the local public of things. So what do? You shut them down.
And a word to the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Didn't you just shut down some African transmitter sites? Was that a good idea? I don't think so, just look at what they can do when they don't like you.
Yep. If you're relying on local retransmission on FM stations or whatever, that'll be cut out pretty quickly. But if you're broadcasting on shortwave from a distance, they're going to have a hard time stopping those transmissions.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
First off, organized by the Indonesia Land DX Club, we have the YBDXPI FT8 Contest, 0-100 October 19th to 23:59 Zulu October 20th, 160 through 10 meters, no WARC bands. It is FT8 only.
There's the 1010 International Fall Contest, CW, 0100 Zulu October 19th to 23:59 Zulu October 20th, organized by the 1010 International Net. Band 10 meters, and it's CW.
The New York QSO Party, organized by the New York QSO Party Committee, will be held 1400 Zulu October 19th to 0200 Zulu October 20th. All amateur bands excluding the WARC bands, and it is an all-mode event.
And there's Worked All Germany Contest, 1500 Zulu October 19th to 1459 Zulu October 20th, organized by the Deutscher Amateur Radio Club. The modes are CW and SSB, bands 3.5, 7, 14, 21, and 28 megahertz. And a little something that for some of you could be of interest, up to the 14th of October, the International Space Station is sending out slow scan television pictures. All you have to do is check out when it passes over your town and use a SSTV software to decode the frequency 145.800 on VHF 2 meters FM mode.
All right, that sounds interesting. We've seen that happen before, and it's always fun to get those transmissions using even a very basic scanner.
Just a handheld scanner works fine.
Yep, sounds good. We thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to email us, radioreport@yahoo.com is our address. We are live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group, we welcome Chet Bryan joining us. Look for International Radio Report on Facebook. Our YouTube channel with over 1,000 subscribers. You can catch any of our shows on YouTube at your convenience. youtube.com/@IRR is where you'll find us. And our X account is at IRRCKUT. We invite you to follow us there. That will do it for us this week. Lots of information. We thank you for tuning in. We'll do it again next Sunday for our next edition of our show, the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Radio RSA, the voice of South Africa from Johannesburg.